Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. Today's episode is with my good friend, Anthony Spencer, childhood friend, Cub Scouts, church,
Do you know
Boy
Anthony
Scouts.
was my scoutmaster?
No.
You didn't know that?
I do remember that, yeah.
Him and Brother Steele would take us, you can't see the quotation marks I'm throwing up, folks, camping once a month. And what they would do is they would go scout for elk in the off season. And so they would make these fat 14, 15-year-old boys hike 13 miles in 2 days.
That's right.
Oh, they wanted it. They wanted it bad. I remember Brother Steele taking my pack with 80 pounds and throwing it on his pack and being like, let's go. We're going. We're going.
I can remember hearing about that. And they would duck hunt, too.
Yeah, they would duck hunt a couple times.
So it's really a chance for Brother Steele and Anthony to go out and do a whole bunch of hunting.
Yes.
With the backdrop or the excuse of young men, wow, I can't believe Anthony would do that.
He's a genius.
Yeah, so Anthony.
That was before the Scouts were really gay.
Brent, that's not PC.
What's that?
My dear friend Anthony Spencer and I have been through many, many hunts together, hunted a lot together. Anthony is an incredible human being, a good father. If you've watched, he has been on some gritty films. He was in our Hell's Canyon film. You can see that with Cousin Ben. And then recently,
you did a rifle hunting thing with him
and
his son during the open season.
Yep. His son he takes his boys hunting, takes his daughters hunting, take all his kids hunting. He's a good dad about getting his kids involved in the outdoors. And Brock shot a 190 something inch mule deer this year on a trip with the three of us. And just a great guy. And you've heard the feedback, 99% of it's positive, but every now and then there's a negative comment on that film with Anthony and his son. We've talked about a few times. So before we get into this podcast, and I want to let you know, this podcast, I just went to hang out with my good friend, and we shot bows down at the Indian Head Archery Club down in Weiser, where Anthony lives. We shot bows, looked at each other's gear, and we just sat down and talked about the release he's using, his bow, his setup, the arrows. Everything's a little bit different than what I'm using. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting to see what other guys do and what their setups look like. So it's really mostly all about gear, contrasting his stuff to my stuff, and talking about releases and how we've evolved our archery game doing that. So before we dive into that, Brent has a couple controversial emails here and there, messages that have come through, as well as positive ones. And we're going to address a couple of those right now.
I hope you don't want those positive ones. I did not load those up. But I do have negative ones for you.
I've got one right here, which goes right along with the deal with Anthony. A guy wrote in. His name is Chris Rouse. He says, the comment on taking away the rifle to finish off the elk, and for those that don't know, Anthony, his son, shoots a little far back on the elk, like liver area, and the elk, runs and he shoots it again in that same spot.
Well within Brock's range. He shoots that range all the time.
Anyway, we've talked, we beat that like a dead horse, but anyway, he shoots it and it runs off, and Anthony and Brock come back the next day, and it's not far from where they last left it.
Yeah.
It was snow and cold and below freezing, and the elk was in great shape, and we packed it out. Mm-hmm. But backed out because the bull. But a lot of people felt like the animal suffered, and you're an a-hole because you didn't make a perfect shot, and he shouldn't have been shooting, and his father should have taken the rifle away from his son and finished the elk off on his own. And anyway, we've talked about that before. Not going to talk about it again. Go back and listen to earlier shows. The comment that Chris left said, the comments on taking away the rifle to finish off the elk are wrong. I mean, it's a tricky situation because you want to end animal suffering, but it's not legal to do that. And so we have to follow these rules, and you get into this tough spot when you do that. He said, but he followed up and said, I guess there's no one else that shoots a little far back on animals ever. Keep up the good work. And that's the reality of it, is everybody has their day. Mm-hmm. Everybody makes shots. Everybody misses shots if you've hunted long enough. And we learn from that, and we get better. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. And it's really tough to recreate a situation that is life and death like that. Lots of hard work, prep, time. The only thing that gives you experience, really, in the end, is experience. And
he learned from that. He totally drilled the last couple of animals that he shot at.
Right. He has. Yeah. I mean,
drilled them.
When it comes to archery, when it comes to any of this hunting stuff, there's times, I've said this many times, in archery especially. I mean, rifle, I've pretty much smoked everything I've gone after in the last, I don't know how many years. It just dropped. Mostly everything just dies with a rifle in my hand. Bow and arrow is a different ball game. There's a lot of variables in play. And there are times when I have been an absolute hero, like, whoa, oh my gosh, how did you pull that off? Mm-hmm. And then there are times where things didn't go well, you know.
But that's part of the fun of bow hunting.
Yes, it is. It's part of the challenge. It's why it's harder. It's why it's, you know, more fulfilling in a way it's more fun in a lot of ways with a rifle, but it's more rewarding and more fulfilling with a bow. You know, I'm getting ready to put out a film of my Texas whitetail hunt, spot and stock, you know, where I make this perfect shot, the Coues deer, climbing a tree and drilling that deer, shooting Big Sexy this year, my bear hunt from last year. There's all these shots where it's like, boom, you're perfect. And then there's a few that don't go so well. And so anyway, talking about other negative comments, I posted a picture of which I've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times. I posted a picture of my Sitka blacktail on Kodiak, which I shot with Cole Kramer and Foss, and I was there with my buddy Tim Lesser from Leupold. And I've talked about this story before. I hit the buck a little low, like an inch under the heart. You know, left and right were good. I guessed yardage. It was a guess. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to get the range. And I guessed, like what you do in archery typically, especially when you don't have a range finding site like the Zero. Mm-hmm. Anyway, just hit him a little low. I mean, left and right was beautiful. Then I grabbed the rifle and shot him because he didn't drop. He bled a lot, and he probably would have died from the way I hit him.
But he was going to walk into some trees, and you guys just, bear country, didn't want to mess with that.
Yep. Basically, I'm really open about all that stuff, and I put the post on Instagram. Talked about it just briefly, and then my buddy Ryan Harder had to give me a bunch of crap over that. Ryan Harder and I hunted in Alberta together when I was at Primitive. He's a buddy of Snyder, Hunt Harder GS. He's like, he writes, another poorly placed shot by Gritty, ? No, like, can't be. And it was a really a-hole comment, basically, at the end of the day. Everybody misses, period. Mm-hmm. Nobody has those perfect shots. I've hunted with Aaron. I watched him miss lots of times. And it's not only that did Aaron miss with a recurve, he also missed with a compound. We all miss. So anyway, you know, you as hunters, we can dig on each other when someone misses, but you know, when you live in a glass house, you just should keep your mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And there's very few people I know that have gone out in the woods and not had problems, not missed, not, you know, that are flawless, especially when
everything I've shot's died. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, really. So anyway, there's that. Other things. There were some positive comments that came in I really appreciate. One of them is on YouTube just the other day, Lessons Learned in 2018 with Ryan Carter, which if you haven't heard Ryan Carter's podcast, check them out. They're really good. We get so much feedback, positive feedback on that. We're going to have Ryan back. Troy Westerber says, I will have to leave you a positive review. I'm assuming on iTunes, which I appreciate that, Troy. Don't forget. And he said, I don't always agree with you, but that's okay, which I expect. I can have my opinions, and I expect to chafe people because I'm not I'm always open for new information, and I always want to learn some new things. What was the comment that came in just yesterday on Joe Rogan?
Oh, this is so one of our oldest episodes, episode 80, was Joe Rogan and Cameron Hanes at the Western Hunt Expo.
Which, by the way, that was like right after I did the ATA show. The podcast was real new. Aaron Snyder and I are sitting there, and Joe Rogan comes walking through the Hunt Expo, and I'm
with Cam Hanes.
With Cameron
He's
Hanes.
hanging out with Cam.
And he was here with his family, like skiing in the mountains. And Cam's like, come down and hang out at the expo. Well, as you can imagine, Joe has a lot of people surrounding him. And, Cam comes over and we get introduced to Joe, Aaron Snyder and I. And it turns out Joe is familiar, like he listened to the Gritty podcast.
During your podcast, he pulled out his phone. He's showing you pictures of your podcast he has downloaded on his phone.
Yeah, and he was saying he enjoyed it. And I was like,
what do you say to that?
I was like, do you want to do a podcast for just 15 minutes? I mean, are you game? And Joe said, yeah, man, that'd be cool. I got time. And there were people there and they're like, Joe doesn't have time. Joe's got to go here. Joe's got this and stuff. And Joe's like, no, I have time. So that was really cool because he just made the time.
And he sat down for like 45 minutes.
Well, yeah, I tried to cut him off a couple times and go, I know you got to go. And then Joe just kept going.
Yeah.
And I want to think he enjoyed it. Since then he's complimented my show multiple times. He's reached out to me on occasion and said when he hears an episode he appreciates, he lets me know. That's really cool, especially when you're the king of podcasting. I mean, on so many levels.
Yeah.
And anyway, I will say that Joe, one of the things I like about Joe Rogan is he is one of the nicest people I've ever met. I tried to keep my cool on that podcast, but I will not lie to you. Of all the podcasts I've ever done, that's probably the only one I've ever been
stressed out
really nervous about.
Yeah.
And it was it was great. It was smooth. There was nothing that.
It's one of my all-time
It's one of my favorites. I mean, Joe's a comedian. He's hilarious.
And Cam did so well. Him and Cam, they feed off each other great. It was a good pod. If you haven't seen it, it's episode 80.
Especially since Cam and Snyder don't exactly. They're like oil and water in so many ways. But Rogan was awesome. What I like about Joe is his ability to warm up, his ability to be open to new ideas. Mm-hmm. So he has strong opinions.
He used to be a moon landing denier.
Yeah. So he has strong opinions, he often, but he's always open to new ideas. But you're going to have to convince him. But he is open to a new idea. And anyway, one of the comments we got was...
it's by Richard Guzman. Don't trust Joe flip-flop Rogan, but I do love his podcast.
I can see where people would call Joe a flip-flopper, because he'll have one idea and then he'll get new information and he'll change his mind.
It's because, especially in today's political climate, that's so weird. Once you have your guns, you have to stick by them.
Yeah. And that's actually... people get called a flip-flopper, but to me, that's when you go...
That's growth.
It's when you change to one side and then go back and change back again and change back again. Joe doesn't really do that. What he does is, okay, I used to be, let's say, a non-hunter, a moon landing denier, and now I've had enough evidence and experts and people on that I now believe that actually did happen. That to me isn't flip-flopping. But what I like about it is Joe's always willing to learn new things. So back to Troy Westerber, he said, I don't always agree with you, but that's okay. I appreciate that, because if we can't disagree and still value each other on other things, then we have a problem in this world.
Yeah.
You make me think. I've been doing this a long time without a podcast or blog or anything like that. I've never hunted to get recognition. I hunt to feed my family and challenge myself. I have also never had close to the success that you have had. With that said, I also don't make a living hunting either. You inspire me to work harder at hunting, fitness, and just being a better person. I have considered doing a hunting blog. You are welcome in my camp anytime. You are a positive influence on the sport, and I would be honored to hunt with you. With that said, I hunt alone most of the time and have been more successful solo. I listen to your podcast at work. Stay gritty and don't worry about what people say. Very Nice comment. Reasonable human being. I appreciate that, Troy. I do want to engage with the community, whether they say positive or negative things. I don't want to dwell on it, but I think it's useful to discuss it. And it reminds me all the time that I need to be open-minded. Mm-hmm. Like, there are people with really different ideas, and maybe I'm wrong. But you know me. It's going to take a lot to convince me I'm wrong.
You're a man of strong opinions.
Anyway, this one came in on episode 420, the Hunting Public Arizona Coues Deer. The Hunting Public, I've said before, is one of the shows I really enjoy right now. I told Anthony he needs to go watch a bunch of their whitetail hunting films. It's just real and raw, and they're killing great bucks on public land. And it's like, how are you doing that? You know, on the east where there's not much to choose from and it's pretty packed.
You're taking little slips of land that you're hunting on.
Yeah. And so it's been really neat to follow their journey, and they're just good guys. And Dylan McCulloch wrote in, he said, I am from Wisconsin and have loved watching all the Hunting Public videos this year. Great podcast. You should get them on again and have them explain in more detail how they find new public land and what they look for and how they find the bedding areas. One of the things that they mentioned in that podcast, and they've mentioned on a lot of their shows, is they hunt very close to bedding areas. They find out where the bedding areas are, and then they set up near those. And that's kind of a risky, it's kind of a no-no among a lot of the whitetail common knowledge or I guess like strategy. Sometimes when you're hunting small acreage and it's private and it's a little lease, you kind of hunt the Ryan Lamper style where you get as close as you can without them ever knowing you're there. Mm-hmm. And then you wait for them to make a mistake. Because once they do find out you're there, you know, a lot of times it's over.
Yeah.
Where on public land, maybe things are a little different. But according to those guys, they'll take chances, and then they kill big animals. Great comment, and I would love to get them back on. We'll work on that. They're good dudes. So thanks, Dylan. Appreciate that. I think we should roll on to the podcast.
Probably, but I would like to point out for those that are watching, Brian's got a pretty new sweet shirt on.
Yes, I have a Gritty shirt. We have new Gritty apparel.
Yep.
Got some Gritty hats. I got my little camo. What's this camo called? Multicam hat with little Gritty patch on the side, leather patch. Simple. I like it. Gritty shirts. Mm-hmm. Check them out.
We'll be selling them at the Western Hunt Expo first.
Yep, they're at the Western Hunt Expo, and they'll be at the movie night on Friday, February 15th. And then once the Hunt Expo is over, we'll put them online.
Yeah.
And you can order them through briancall.com. Anyway.
I would like to point out, we have them now. And it's been 2 years since we've had shirts. So if you really want one, I wouldn't wait.
We're going to try to stay more consistent in the apparel area. We appreciate anyone who buys our hats and shirts and supports the show and supports the team here at Gritty.
And it's just a good word.
It is a good word.
It's just a good word.
Gritty.
Yeah.
We're going to do some grit ones.
Yeah.
We're going to do some cool shirts. So right now we just went with the logo and kept it pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. I like them. They're crisp, but they're clean. They're not cluttered, but they still look good.
There you have it. If you haven't got tickets to Western Hunt Expo and you are coming, go to westernhuntexpo.com or get the Western Hunt Expo app. And when you buy your tickets, put in the code MTNOPS, Mountain Ops, and you'll get, it's
$10 off.
$10 off each ticket. And so that's a good deal. And then also, the movie night I think is sold out. But
you can try and buy. We might do an encore.
We might do an encore event on Saturday night. We'll let you know. But there's the Cameron Hanes 5K. Mm-hmm. We'd like to see a lot more people sign up for that. I'm going to be there. I'm looking forward to that. It's on Saturday, I think February 16th. Is Spieler going to come to the 5K? I don't know.
Let's invite him.
But Chris and I are going to do a workout with a limited group of people on Friday morning. Mm-hmm. Eva Shockey is doing a workout. We've got Ryan Lampers and Casey Harbertson are going to do a hike. You can sign up for that if that's your thing.
Sounds like torture trying to
figure out what your jam is and get ready. Sign up at mountainops.com/Hunt Expo.
Yep, you can see a list of all the events at that mountain office.
Yeah, it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Click on the day, and you'll see what's available on that day. And, yeah, join us. That's it for right now. Mm-hmm. Enjoy this episode with my buddy, Anthony. If you got questions, leave them in the comments. And thanks for everything. Appreciate all the support and the engagement. And as always, stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
We're diving in.
All right.
Going in deep.
Going in deep.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm here with my lifelong friend, Anthony Spencer.
Yeah.
Kind of like a family member almost, you know. Certainly like a brother. If you followed Gritty since the beginning, we've got a few adventures.
Yeah, a few.
We've had together. Went to high school together. Cub Scouts.
Yeah.
Even Cub
Way
Scouts.
back.
We are in Weiser, Idaho. I'm visiting. And we're at the Indian Head
Bow Hunters.
Hunters?
Indian Head Bow Hunters, yeah.
Indian Head Bow Hunters.
Indoor range here.
It's pretty cool. It's like a little clubhouse here.
Yeah, for our little town. It's great.
Yeah, you got your little refrigerators back here and snacks. And I do see a cable lock on that one fridge.
I don't know what's in that fridge.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's a pretty small town. Weiser's only got 5,000 people. So it's pretty cool that we got a little archery club here. You can shoot to 40 yards indoors and 80 yards if you just open the roller-door there.
It's got some history in this room. You got some old school bows on the wall there.
A bunch of old mounts or old horn mounts anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Tournaments down here?
Yeah, they have leagues, 3-dot leagues, 3D leagues, which is going on right now. That's why it's all set up behind us. And then they hold 3 or 4 outdoor 3D shoots every year in the local area.
Well, Anthony and I are going to talk briefly, real quick, about the gear that we're using. Mostly what Anthony's using. I think it's always useful to hear another guy's take on equipment, why he's got what he's got. I'll talk a little bit about what I've got and why and so on. Yeah, I think it's useful. I think it's interesting for people. Yeah. With that, we just shot a bunch of arrows.
Yeah.
Okay. And you shot my Nock to It.
Yeah. Which I really liked.
Which is, for those that are watching on YouTube, you can see this is a thumb button release. If you don't know what it is, for those listening, basically I can kind of shoot this like a hinge in the sense that it's a surprise release.
I shot my hinge without even thinking about it. That's just how it worked for me.
And then I can force it easily without any extra movement or anything.
Yeah.
You're shooting a True Ball HT hinge release.
I have an HT and I have a sweet spot. My wife has taken over the sweet spot. And she says it's hers now.
So explain to people why the sweet spot versus the HT and so on.
The sweet spot was the first one I shot, and it has the safety. I don't know why. It was just so foreign to me that felt good to have at first. And I think that's why my wife likes it. She feels a little comfortable with that safety.
That's why I got it.
Yeah. And I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually, when I started shooting it. And then I got this.
It's a great way to start using a hinge.
It is.
It takes all the intimidation out of it.
Well, like this winter when cousin Ben and I were hunting in Idaho, late season archery hunt, Ben gets thrown under the bus a lot. I'm sorry, Ben. We were shooting in camp. There's a foot of snow. And he was not shooting well. He was not shooting consistent at all.
When we were archery hunting for elk, he was not shooting well at all.
Yeah, he was struggling. And he admitted he didn't, he's trying to, get his business going. He didn't shoot as much as he could have. So I told him, I said he was just so inconsistent. He'd have a group here, and then the next group would be here, and the next group would be here. And I told him to try this, and he was so intimidated by this one.
Yeah.
But he got that sweet spot with a lock. He's like, I think I can try that. Well, I had to watch him like a hawk the rest of the hunt because that was going to disappear. He fell in love with that thing. And his shooting just, his group shrunk. Yeah. They became consistent. I think he mentioned to you, I think he said the same thing to me. Literally in about a 20-minute span, he said shooting a bow became fun again, all over again.
Absolutely. He ended up swinging back through Utah on his way back home to Phoenix. And I got him an HT, gave him an HT True Ball that I had. I now use the Too Smooth, John Dudley's Too Smooth hinge release, But the HT is one of my favorites too. In Ben's defense, he's a killer.
Yeah.
He's a killer. No question about it. But if you think about all the stuff he's killed, he gets close.
Yeah, he does. He got close on that hunt a lot. He had a particular buck that he had a random chance encounter with in the middle of the day out in a wide open sage hillside. He still doesn't know how they met in the middle of an open hillside.
It's called the rut, the great equalizer.
But then he was locked onto that buck the rest of the hunt, and I think 3 times he got within 30 to 40 yards of that buck, 3 different days, and just still never got a shot off. But no, Ben's good at getting close. He's good at closing the deal. He's just not so good at targets.
Which is it's interesting. You'll have people talk all the time about how well they shoot or don't shoot. You'll have people talk about how good they are. Ben knows he's not a great shot.
Yeah.
Yet he can out hunt and out kill most guys.
For the amount of time that he gets to spend in the field,
it's
a good kill rate.
Being a good shot doesn't necessarily translate into being a good hunter.
Right.
You'd like them to come together, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
So he switched to that. You've been using the hinge, and what are your thoughts on the hinge yourself, personally?
Well, so this year was that hunt with Ben was my first hunt with it. I've been shooting it for about a year, I guess just a year.
You shot a good little mule deer with your...
I shot a mule deer with that hunt with it, and it was perfect. I kind of wondered, how was this going to go? I shot it, again, for about a year, 3D leagues, shoots, practice, but it wasn't until I got up in the mountains that I thought, how am I going to keep from losing this thing?
Yeah.
How am I going to, when I'm set up, I hadn't thought through that until I got on the hunt. So I think I called you or texted you. You were on a hunt too. I'm like, what do I do with this thing? Where do I put it when I'm crawling through the sagebrush? And I ended up, I had an old wrist rocket that I just took apart, got some paracord, sent it through the hole here and just strapped it to a wrist thing. So at least it was always dangling on my wrist. That gave me a little more confidence to hunt with it and not lose it. But yeah, no, when I finally got a shot, it wasn't a huge buck. But when I finally got a shot, man, I pulled through it just like I do on targets. It just felt perfect and just hammered that buck. So
the True Ball makes a little deal when you pull these.
Yeah, that's what you told me when I was up in the mountains.
Decals off. They have a little, I forget what it's called, but a little plastic piece that adapts to this and then goes onto your wrist. Right. So just like what you handmade. Which you do a lot of that kind of stuff to save a buck. You're like, $100 for that? Yeah, I'll use some paracord.
Yeah, my kids probably tell you the same thing.
I always make fun of you for being cheap, but it's frugal. It's frugal. That's why you're so wealthy in the bank, but not in the car you drive.
Yeah, no, not in the car I drive.
So anyway,
no, so that I really liked it. However, shooting yours today, I've always known that a thumb release would probably be the best of both worlds for hunting. And after shooting yours, I'll be getting one. For sure.
It really does seem to meld the two together for me.
Because like I say, when I just picked yours up and shot it the first time, you didn't give me a whole lot of instruction. I shot it exactly like it didn't feel any different than this.
Yep.
I just hooked my thumb around it, pulled through it like I do, and it triggered it.
Well, that's my issue with a trigger, with a wrist rocket, is when I use an index finger release like that, it changes my anchor point, stuff like that. Yeah. So switching from the trigger, the index release, the wrist rocket, whatever you want to call it, switching from the wrist rocket to something like a hinge back and forth kind of throws off your anchor points and where you hit and all of that. Well, with this thumb button, it's the same mechanics.
Yeah.
Just now, instead of pulling through with the hinge and rotating, now I'm pulling the button slightly.
Yeah.
And again, I can get that surprise release, but I have more control in the case of a heavy wind or timing. An animal's walking, you're like, meh, and you stop it.
Yeah.
I need to send
that to go off.
With the hinge, I'd find myself going, meh, and then going, come on, go off. And we talked about the difference. I'm no archery expert, right?
That's right. I'd vouch for that.
Yeah, but I can shoot.
Yeah.
Especially,
you're not a tech expert like numbers and
now that I've spent enough years, you can see how I shoot now compared to after hanging out with Snyder for a couple of years and working on it. Like, I'm a different archer than I was back then. That said, I learned more than anything I've learned in the last couple of years that Everybody's different.
Yeah.
What one guy does and what one guy excels at, another guy may have a horrible experience with it.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all. Ryan Lampers, I watched him win
Train to Hunt. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I watched Ryan Lampers win the Train to Hunt a couple of times, or at least come be on the podium. I followed him around, watched him shoot. Ryan is one of the fastest guys I've ever seen. He draws, boom, and he pulls the trigger on his on his finger.
Oh,
fast. And I don't know if he uses a thumb button now or what, but Ryan is a deliberate shooter. There's no surprise release. He's putting it on and he's sending it.
Yeah.
And he's 12 ringing all the time. Some guys do that and they would develop target panic.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would be a mess. And so the hinge takes him to another place. I feel like it's really when me and him went to the Iron Mind hunting.
Oh yeah.
With Joel Turner, and Ryan understood the concept, but he's like, I don't think I'd like this in a hunting situation. I don't want it to be a surprise. I want to know.
He wants to be in charge of it.
And watching him be so steady, so confident, when he puts that pin on there, it's almost simultaneous. Pin's there, shot's gone. Like he's the fastest shooter I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's consistently hitting the target.
See, I think I would like Joel's program because I'm kind of an OCD guy. I have my procedures. Shooting to me is not instinctual. It's very much a process. And I like to check the boxes as I go. I think I would like his. I think I'd really benefit from it.
Well, David Brinker he talked about this on a couple of shows with me. He had a really difficult time and went through some pretty rocky times in archery with shooting because he had target panic.
Yeah.
I talked to Donnie Vincent, and you can see if any of you listeners have watched Donnie's movie The Other Side, you'll see some severe target panic where Donnie just wets the bed, just completely misses.
Yeah.
Like close shots multiple times. He talked about it on the podcast we did. It was a real problem. Now he will not hunt with anything except a hinge, and the hinge has brought hunting back to him.
That's what I
archery
feel like.
hunting.
I feel well, I can't say 100%, but I feel so in control of my shot. Whereas I really develop with the trigger finger release. I really develop target panic bad, where when that pin hits the target, my brain is just, whether I want to shoot or not, it's telling my finger to pull that trigger.
And for some reason, I've never really had that issue. I actually shoot better, like Tim Gillingham, the hammer. Like I shoot a little better hammer in the trigger at the right moment.
Yeah.
I would say my style right now is I shoot the hinge 90% of the time and really achieve a surprise release, try to pull through as quickly as I can.
Right.
Because I think it teaches me aiming and to be steady at full draw.
Yeah.
And to be patient and to accept the float. The pin just floating.
Yeah.
And just accept it. So then when I switch over to the thumb button and I'm at full draw, now all those reinforced proper technique kind of things that come with the hinge, now when I'm at full draw and I stick that pin where I want it, both eyes open, I just sort of pull and a little bit on that. You saw the trigger, the button on my thumb is really sensitive.
Yeah, real sensitive.
And I just and it's just gone. It's gone before you know it, but it's a deliberate, I hold my breath, I stick it on there all in I combine these three things all at once and boom, and I just smash the targets. And I find that works for me in a high pressure, high adrenaline situation really well. Really, since I started using the thumb release, I've had one shot that didn't go well. And that was a shot where I guessed the yardage. And didn't have it set. Animals walking away, and I'm like, I'm going to guess. And I shot a little low. But it was a great shot. Left and right was perfect. I mean, perfect. It was just a yardage issue.
Yeah.
I haven't really experienced the problems with the hinge that I did when I was hunting with a hinge. Now, the hinge was great when it was great.
Yeah.
I shot my bear, my film Consuming Life. You'll see I shoot that bear at 45, 47 yards. With the hinge I had all day.
Yeah.
It was calm, no real wind, pulled through, boom. Shot my elk with Aaron, same thing. Didn't know I was there. 72 yards. Just set it, let it float.
Yeah.
Boom. You put me in a situation where that animal's moving and I got to get the shot off quick. That hinge is a nightmare for me. You put me in a heavy wind, like in Alberta, and I'm trying to steady in the wind and
That'd be
like
tough.
trying to get it.
Yeah.
It just be a surprise. It's, it's like having someone like nudge you the whole time you're trying to shoot. So that's where I just decided the hinge, especially with Western hunting, a lot of spot and stock, a lot of the stuff I do, I get in close range with. Well, the best time I get to be in range is when the wind's blowing hard.
Yeah.
Well, I need a system that helps me shoot in the wind. So that's why I started to go with the trigger.
Yeah. And again, because I've only done one hunt with it, I didn't come across a lot of those things that you have because you've done so many. But I didn't have it this year, but I could see it happening. So I think going to that thumb is going to be the answer. The other thing you talked about, that allowing that, or what did you call it? You said just being okay with that pin float.
Accepting the float.
Accepting the float. There's been a lot of things that this has helped with. That is the number one by far. Is I had a terrible time accepting the float with a wrist rocket. It doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I told you I've had people here shooting league, and I shoot pretty good. I'm towards the top. I'm not the best shooter here by any means, but I've had people look at me shoot and go, "How do you even hit?" Like, I'm not a very steady aimer, but I just accept that float and I just pull through, and like you said, your body's always getting it back on target.
Right.
And as long as I just pull through it, man, that's where the arrow goes. And
you're in the ballpark.
Yeah, I can't even explain it. The guys ask me, "How does that work? How do you have pin movement?" And I'm like, I don't know how to explain it other than it's just getting the average. It's average. It's always getting back to center, and I'm just pulling through it.
The way Joel describes it is you're driving a car down the road, and as you're driving down the road, you start to drift right.
Yeah.
Or you start to drift left. You don't consciously think about how you're drifting left and correct,
Right.
or how you're drifting right and correct on the road. You just do it.
Yeah.
Jog the wheel a
that's
tiny
good.
bit, and you
Good
just stay
comparison.
on the road. That's how it is when you're aiming. The pin's there and it's going right. It's already going left again. I mean, as soon as your brain realizes it's not where it needs to be, it's already correcting it. So the shot process is really one of just squeezing, like following through on your technique.
Yeah.
And trusting that you're between the lines, like in a car.
Right.
But that right there it's hard because mentally
it doesn't make sense to your brain. Your brain wants to think it's got a trigger when that pin is right over the center.
Exactly perfect.
Which leads to the target panic later.
Which then, if you're consciously driving a car and you're like, "Oh, I just went left," and you turn left, and then you're, "Oh, I just went right." Like, remember when you were 15? That's how you drove.
That's right.
Right, and you overcorrected all the time. And imagine if you're aiming, you're trying to punch it to time it just right. So you have a lot of things going against you, and that's where the hinge, I think, does help develop that discipline.
And that's what I've told people. I don't know if this is even correct, but I've just told them, it seems to me just allowing that float, but making sure this is not flinchy, jerky, is more inherent to accurate shooting than that float, than the shot breaking right when your pin is touching the middle.
Yeah.
Because those guys, you can argue it all you want. My logic would tell me the same thing theirs does, that no, that shot's got to go off right when that pin touches the center. That makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
But that's what they're trying to do, and their arrow's not going where they want it to.
Right.
And they see mine moving and floating, and it's going where I want it to. So
see, now at this point, I can just accept it just floating.
Yeah.
But also punch it.
Yeah.
I'm not timing it. I'm just getting it in the ballpark. I was telling you when we walked into the range today, my thoughts on the line, or when I pull up and shoot, I'm so much less caught up in my shot. I just shoot.
Yeah.
I just shoot. And now I just hit. And I don't know what it is. I just care a lot less, but I hit a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think partly too, because I've realized that being effective, out to 50, 60 yards, like I can hold it and shoot it and execute a great shot at those distances. Certainly enough to kill every animal I aim at. Do I need to improve so I hit like an inch further?
Right.
Like those when my groups are closing that much more personally for hunting? I don't believe so. I don't need to be that good for hunting. I don't need to be that precise for hunting.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to game those levels anymore. I just want to come in.
Mice.
No, I'm coming in. I want to like drill the insert.
Yeah.
I want to hit the kill zone.
Right.
And if I'm in that kill zone all the way out to 100, does it matter if it's off 4 inches right or 4 inches left? It doesn't matter if it's in the kill zone,
Right.
you know. And that range is like 30 yards and in or 40 yards and in. Like I'm hitting a softball.
Yeah. That's the other thing I found is that you still can punch a hinge, right? I mean, you can pull, and then jerk it at the end.
Yeah.
You know, in the last year of shooting it, the better I've gotten at it. Even if on those shots that I do, I pull, and then at the end I kind of flinch a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't throw my shot off that much. It's just so close to breaking anyway. Like, and I kind of relate it to, you know, I've shot a pistol for so many years, and I can have what I know is a bad trigger pull on a pistol, and it'll throw my shot off this far. And somebody next to me has a bad trigger pull, and it throws them off the paper. You know what I mean? And so you've just refined that enough to where even when you know it's not good for you, it's not throwing you off like the guy that hasn't refined it yet.
Yeah.
His is missing paper or missing an animal or putting in the guts or whatever, instead of putting you off an inch or two or whatever.
Yeah, shooting's fun though. Now that I use the hinge,
I agree.
The hinge is a integral part of my practice and everything I do. And that hinge, anytime I do feel a little wonky on my shot, I just pull out the hinge and start shooting with a hinge, and I'm back to where I need to be. It's like my reset button.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's the release that you're using.
Yeah.
And then you're shooting
So I'm shooting a PSE Evolve 35.
And what do you like about this bow?
You know, it's funny because after years of trying to make
pretty
things
long axle
light,
to axle, isn't it?
that's what I was going to get at. So the first thing I like about this bow is I have come to appreciate a longer, heavier bow for shooting accurate. And I'm talking about at range. You know,
I have a severe dislike for it because it's not a Hoyt, but I mean, to each their own.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. I have no loyalty to PSE. I just shot this at the shop
and liked it,
and I liked it, and so I thought I'd give it a try. I typically don't shoot a bow this long or this heavy. You know, I'm usually kind of concerned with weight. That's that peep it. You know, serve it in. If you've seen those.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
That's
they're really light. No serving. They don't move. You know, you can move it especially if you slacken the string with the press. But yeah, I like that.
That's a cool peep.
Yeah, called the peep it.
And it just, you don't tie it in.
No, you don't tie it in.
So it doesn't move on you?
Mm-mm. No. Like if I tried to move that there, I could get it to
so you
move,
could mark it with like a black marker, and then you know if it moved or didn't move, and you can always just slide it up or down.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah. So but like I say, the weight, the length, when it comes to shooting longer range, and I'm not a crazy long range shooter. You know, I mean, I like to practice to 100 yards, but I'm a solid 70, 80 yard shooter.
Yeah.
But it's just made a big difference now. It doesn't carry as well, and it's a little heavier on the pack. I find that I strap it to my pack fairly often. Yeah. I hunt very, very open country. Mm-hmm. People like, you know, some of my friends are like, how do you not have your bow? I'm like, because the country has no trees. Yards. I don't sneak up. I mean, there's no accidental sneak up on an animal out there. Rarely, you know, so I strap it to my pack a lot, or I throw it over my head. But anyway, and I shoot a 3-pin slider. You know, Montana Black Gold slider. So
that's what I use when I'm not using the zero.
Yeah, I shot your zero today. That was pretty cool. I got to admit, I liked it a lot. Takes a little getting used to, I think. But,
yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, other than the fact that it's not legal in Idaho or Oregon, now that I think about it, right?
Yeah, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana.
Oregon has changed some they've gone through their entire regs the last 2 years, and they have one more phase of that. So they've slackened up on a few things. You know, you can shoot expandables now. Of course, you can shoot the lighted Nox, but they still, you still couldn't shoot that. So anyway, I couldn't hunt with it in Idaho. No, I mean, I use a rangefinder and I use a dialable pin.
Yeah,
that's just doing the same thing for me.
Right.
Less movement. It doesn't bother my conscience at all that would be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel like it's going to increase harvest rates by this huge amount, and therefore it's going to reduce hunter opportunity. And I just feel that it's negligible.
Yeah, well, and especially right now, you know, one thing is inherent in it that's not going to make that happen, and that is price. So many people are priced out of it that it's not going to, there's not enough people that are going to have it now that are going to really skew, in my opinion, the numbers. Mm-hmm. Now, 10 years down the road, are they going to be cheaper? I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
You know, 20 years down the road, it'll be common. and they'll be cheaper. So maybe at some point you see, but what hasn't gone that way with archery? We always become more efficient at killing.
And I think that's a separate discussion. We'll get in. We can get into that because that right there, like you said, we want to preserve the primitive nature of, let's say, these primitive style hunts like muzzleloader, archery. At the same time, we want to reduce animal suffering and be very effective and efficient hunters.
Yeah.
But this balance between increasing success and increasing efficiency as a hunter, but yet keeping it primitive and difficult. That's because you look at this bow and my bow, they're nothing like what we shot 10 years ago.
No,
the arrows are nothing like what we shot. Like everything is more advanced than it was,
more efficient,
including trad bows. Like Snyder uses a bow that has like carbon limbs and overlays and carbon arrows, and that bow is able to repeat the same shot over and over again as long as Aaron does what he needs to do in a way that older gear didn't. And that's a whole nother discussion. But back to just the gear you're using on this bow. You got the sight, but you've got a ripcord release. Why did you go for that? Rest. Yeah.
That's a good question. I bought one, and I actually had a problem with it on a late season hunt. It froze up on me, but I don't want to say froze as in ice.
The ripcord did?
Yeah. It got to where it would come up. It wouldn't go back down at the shot.
Oh.
Right? And so I was actually on the last day or two of a hunt when I found that. And I knew it wasn't freezing because of the temperature. It wasn't going down, and I tried a shot anyway to see what would happen just with my judo point, and it broke the launcher. It just snapped it off because it wasn't going to go down, so it just broke it.
Yep.
And kind of put me out of business. Well, I contacted Ripcord, and they, of course, took care of it right away. Were real good about it. They had said something about, I believe it was a lubrication they were using inside. They had changed the lubrication because that was happening occasionally. And so they sent a new one out. I kind of wanted to switch, but they sent a new one out. I figured I'd try it. I have not had that problem with this one. I've had it on, like Ben and I this year were hunting. It was freezing cold, really, really low temperatures. Didn't have a problem with it. I do keep breaking the little guard that holds your, that holds the arrow, contains it in there, breaks off all the time.
So you got a tight spot quiver.
Tight spot quiver. It's not on, but I've had a few of those.
You got a pretty hefty stabilizer.
Pretty hefty stabilizer. Again, kind of with that. Going back a few years, I was never a long-range shooter. I mean, 50 yards is a long shot to me. I've just never been a fantastic long-range shooter. My last bow setup, I decided to just try setting up a bow a little more, like with a rifle. You don't shoot all rifles long range. I wanted to set up a bow that was a little more designed to shoot long range and see if I could improve myself. And it did. And that was one of the things I went with, was a longer stabilizer, a little more weight. I did find that, it's like a rifle. You set up a rifle right, it's easier to shoot that. You still have to be a good shot. It's easier to shoot it at long range. And the exact same thing holds true with a bow. If you set your bow up for long range, it is easier to get that done as long as you do your part.
And so the arrows.
My arrows, yeah. So I know you're shooting the Valkyrie system, and I have had several conversations with the owner, Brent, and I'm super intrigued by what he's got going. You've mentioned many times that I'm rather thrifty. And I'm also very upfront. So Brent's a great guy. We've talked on the phone many times. Yeah. And I really am. I think he's got an awesome system. I was too cheap to pay for it. And I told him that. I said, Brent, it's too expensive.
Totally reasonable.
Yeah. And he told me, to his credit, a couple things. Number one, he told me how I could achieve similar results on the cheap a little bit.
Yeah. Building your own.
He also told me where that system would fail and what the limits would be compared to his. And he told me that eventually I'm gonna realize that it's worth it, and he's been right. I'm gonna probably go to his system. But what I did is, and this is kind of, Corey Miller helped me out with this too. He
at Triple X Archery.
At Triple X Archery, yeah. Corey's a good guy, and I call him even though I don't live in the Portland area anymore, I call him when I have questions on things. And so we set up these Black Eagle Rampage arrows, 300 spine, with a Easton brass hit insert. right? 75 grain hit insert in the front, and we push it in deeper than it needs to go so that we can then fit the stainless steel innie-outie in front of it, and then just a regular 125 tip. So it gives me that high FOC.
Yep.
And I really didn't need it I wasn't trying to get high FOC necessarily for penetration. I'd never had a problem shooting through elk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I shoot 70 pounds, 72 pounds. I have a 29.5-inch draw length. I've always shot, I think my arrows before were 430 before I went to this system, 430 grains.
Yeah.
I shot through elk. I never thought I needed more penetration. You know, and if I make a bad shot, no, I didn't go through an elk. I didn't think any arrow would anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted it more to see if my long distance shooting would be more consistent.
Tighter groups.
And also in the wind, you know, I live out here, I hunt wide open country.
Yeah.
It's always windy.
Yeah. Right.
So that was really my thought behind trying to go with the high FOC more so than just penetration. So I did it. I have, I think, right at 21 or 29.5% FOC. It's like 527 grains, I think. The only thing I've found is exactly what I was told, is that if I hit anything kind of oblique or, a rock or a rod inside a target, it will blow out the front of the shaft. I actually go through quite a few of these. It's not the fault of the shaft. It's just, it's got to go somewhere. There's nothing containing the end of the shaft like an outsert.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does, I do blow out the front of the shaft if I hit anything hard.
Yeah, this has the outsert, but then it also has
right,
the center pin.
Center pin.
Which, look how long that is. It's longer than the tip.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually, I think, equal length to the broadhead. This is a practice tip. But see the bushing on the back of the center pin. It's got 2 rubber bushings. And Brent has said that also, when you hit it at an oblique angle, it cushions against the carbon and then doesn't break. It also never works loose. It never rattles loose. Right. The precision threading, because it's really a precision head with this top.
Even the field points are.
Even the field, it just screws in like with precision. So it's all aligned and square. It's not like a lot of what you have on the market has a different thread system, which is really low tolerance or height. It's pretty sloppy.
Yeah.
Like you, I told you I shot my broadhead into a rock dirt bank like 25 times in New Zealand, sighting in because I didn't have a target. I did the same thing in British Columbia. I've done the same thing in like a bunch of places I've gone. And then I take that head and then I sharpen it and it's ready to go again.
Yeah,
I mean, it's unreal how much, when you have 200 plus grains of metal.
Yeah.
It's a much different type of tip. It's much more heavy duty than like 100 grain piece of metal. That insert, I've hit a lot of things at that oblique angle and I've never had a shaft break. Ever.
And you haven't bent the tip of that broadhead?
Never.
To where it's not true anymore?
Never. No. It just seems, and I mean, if I shot a brick I've hit rocks.
Sure.
It still survived it. So, yeah, I don't know. I do know that we basically have similar FOC.
Yeah.
But my arrow weighs 505 grains.
Yeah. And mine's like 520, a little between 525 and 530.
So you're just a little bit heavier, which then makes your arrow slower.
A little slower. So what I've found is I have a hard time getting to that 100-yard range on my movable sight.
Just too much. It slows down too much.
Yeah, my sight doesn't go down that far.
On like this arrow here, 505, yours is like 525, 530, like 20 to 25 grains heavier for the same.
And yours is a smaller diameter.
Yes,
you're shooting the X-Impact versus the Rampage.
Not only that, the entire back half to the shaft, I think, is more wind resistant than yours is, because your
I'm shooting a Blazer vane, which is bigger profile than yours.
Mine are shorter.
Yeah, and I shot a 4-vane setup on this first, and they flew really well. But again, I just was, we all fuss over.
Yeah.
Is 270 feet per second really going to change much versus 280? I mean, maybe not on the animal. The animal's not going to know.
Right.
But it's just, what do you want? I wanted to get to 100 yards on my slider sight, and I wanted, so I lightened it down, but I'm still not getting there. And so I am going to switch. I'm going to go to the X-Impact. Now, Black Eagle now makes their insert-outsert system. I don't know what they call it. I can't remember. I've looked into it.
Yep.
It'd be kind of bridging the gap between what I've got and what you've got. And I thought about going with that. I think it'd be a good system.
Yep.
But I think in the end, I'm just going to go ahead and go with the Valkyrie, the whole system.
These Black Eagle X Impact shafts have been solid as well. I do notice a high degree of performance in the wind. What about you?
Yeah. No, I've noticed that too, that I don't get as much wind drift, but I think that's because of the high FOC. You know, I mean, these aren't a fat shaft either, but they're just not as thin as the X Impact.
Right.
So I think it'd only get better. But I have noticed that you might see the arrow tail whipping.
Yeah, I'll see
the arrow's
my tail
still hitting targets.
Yeah, my arrow will even fly crooked in a way. But even in the wind, like I can hold on target. I don't have to aim off.
Yeah.
I don't have to aim off in just about any wind.
Right.
And that's a big deal for me. Like mentally, I like to be able to put it right where I'm aiming and know it's going to go there, even in a heavy wind, instead of trying to guess at 30 yards, I got to aim off this much in this heavy a wind, or at 70, I got to aim off this much in this heavy a wind. It just becomes such a guess.
Right.
I like having a system where I just know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Some people have criticized the shaft because the tip, when it strikes the target, is crooked because the back end of the arrow is moving because the wind's pushing it, but the tip stays on target, but it goes in at an angle. Well, so far I haven't seen that make any bit of difference. When it hits the animal, it blows through, stays on path. It still stays on path, even though the back of the arrow isn't pointed in the right direction. It doesn't seem to make that much difference.
Yeah, because I'm sure technically it probably has less penetration when it hits. But what do you care if it went all the way through them anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if it was enough, it was enough. So,
and then as far as durability goes, like as long as I don't lose an arrow, I'm pretty confident for everything that I do that it's just all reusable. Every arrow I've shot through an animal, every arrow that has blown through bones, has come out the other side in perfect condition. Like here, this one's covered in blood. I've shot a couple of animals with this same exact arrow. I haven't changed anything. I wipe it off and it's good to go again.
And I can tell you, like the deer I shot this year, I actually had ranged the doe. And when the buck stepped out, he was a little bit farther, and I didn't want to re-range, so I guessed how much. So I held my pintle high, and I was a little bit off on my guess. So I didn't hit him perfect, and it was an extremely high, I was quite a bit uphill from him, very steep. And so I actually hit him through the front shoulder blade, the backbone, and the offside shoulder blade. I hit, that's, pretty good bone all the way through. And this arrow did blow all the way through, but it broke it. It shattered it right where I shatter every arrow that I hit something hard. It was shattered right up here at the front, right at the back side of that hit insert.
Yeah.
So it penetrated, did its job. The broadhead was toast, and the arrow was shattered.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of guys talk about Brent Hahn's system, and they've really pushed a lot of them because they didn't want to go with the whole system.
Get the Blood Eagle.
They buy the Blood Eagle, which is basically Brent's broadhead for the Valkyrie system broadhead that you can screw into any insert.
I could have used one on this,
and it's got just the short little. There's no center pin, and then I've got a couple emails from guys saying my arrow broke right behind the broadhead. Well, that's why the center pin is designed. So if you want to save some money and you want to go with it's a sweet head.
Yeah.
But you just have to know there's that weak point behind it.
And the nice thing, Brent will tell you that if you'd asked him.
Yeah.
He'll tell you that.
He'll try to talk you into the center pin every time.
Yeah, and like he did me, he told me that's where I'll break them, and he was dead on. I mean, I've broke probably 5 or 6 of them. That's where they break.
I've never had it happen now. I mean, with all the stuff I've done. But it is painful to lose an arrow.
Yeah,
I
bet.
Like,
doesn't he have a lifetime warranty on them when if you break it or bend it?
Yes,
you just can't lose them.
If you break it or bend it, he will replace it.
Yeah.
Where you run into trouble is if you lose it. If you lose it, you lose it.
I can't remember the last time I've lost a broadhead though. I break tons of them. I shoot slick tricks. I've shot them for years. They're great heads, but I break them all the time.
Yeah,
you break blades, you bend the tip.
I go through animals and out the other side, and they go 20 yards past the animal and bury themselves into a tree or a log or a rock or like dirt.
Yeah.
And I pull it out, and it's like,
clean the edge up.
He's all good. Now scraping it up, and I'm back in it.
Yeah. I think I am going to go to them, give them a try. They're a lot of money, but, we spend a lot of money on everything we do.
Well, it's funny. We put a lot of money into our bows and then other things. I've been watching videos of people shooting animals that they spend a lot of money on a hunt, thousands of dollars to make that hunt happen, take time off work, they do all that, and they get an elk, it comes in, and the elk's leg is back, and they're waiting for that leg to come forward so they can take that shot they want, and it takes forward, and they shoot, and then the elk spins, and it snaps their arrow off, and they get no penetration as it hits the shoulder blade. And I'm like, I have yet to have a personal experience with the Valkyrie in that situation, but I've seen and talked to tons and tons of guys that are using the Valkyrie system on where that is not an issue anymore.
Right.
And to me, it's like, well, if you're going to go on those hunts and spend that money, having this system is a game changer, I think, for do you need it on, a Coues deer in Arizona? It's like shooting a rabbit, probably overkill.
Yeah.
But I even said this for the Total Archery Challenge and other things. I have the Black Eagle Rampage arrows just like you do, and I've kind of mimicked a little heavier tip weight. On that particular event, I'm going around and around and around. I'm taking shots at 115, 120 yards, which with my bow, I can go to 120 with my slider.
Okay.
I find that having those arrows set up that are less expensive option without Brent's whole system and all that, I'm just target shooting, and I'm shooting to my heart's content, and I want to cannibalize arrows.
Yeah.
I've set up my whole system to run this arrow basically without the insert.
Right.
And when I go to tack, that's what I'm doing. And
you're going to lose some.
And I don't want to feel bad about it either or sweat it. And so am I going to use these at the tack? Only if you got balls of brass, because I don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
And I have used them, and I've lost a few, and I'm like,
it hurts.
And I'm stressing over shots at 120 because it's an expensive arrow.
Yeah.
When I set up I got 24 of those for the tack this year of the Rampage. Got them all set up, and they're great arrows.
Yeah.
But they're not going to run the broadhead that I want and be the weight that I want overall and have the FOC that I want.
Right.
But they're a great option for just shooting.
Oh, they're great arrows, yeah.
And it's a great option for if I'm worried about, if I'm really frugal like you, then I'll probably use a Rampage for something like,
because they're so cheap.
Like a Coues deer.
They're not cheap.
No, but they are
cheaper
less
than
this.
No, they're a really good arrow. I'm stressing it. All that weight I've got up front, I'm sure, is putting a lot of stress without anything to contain it, like the outsert, like we've already said. Right. So, and I don't have really problem with straight on impacts, other than if it's real hard, it's angled impacts, it's going to break them. Did you notice, because you shot my Hoyt RX1 back here? Did you notice that it was 83 pounds? I could tell. Mine's at 72, so you're 10 pounds heavier than mine. I could tell that yours was heavier weight, but it still pulled really nice. Yours is more dead at the shot than mine, and I like my bow, so I'm not looking for a reason to switch it up. Yeah, and keep in mind your draw length. Would you say it was 1.5 inches less than mine? So I'm really cramped into your bow. Mm-hmm. But shoot, I shot it really well. Yeah, you did. Stacked them. Yeah, I shot it really well. I asked that because at 83 pounds, it does not feel that heavy of a bow. It just felt like it was a little more than mine. In fact, I didn't realize 10 pounds till I just said that. Yeah. It's quite a bit more weight, but I think it's the draw cycle. Yeah. On that RX1. Yeah. It feels good because I think it's so evenly distributed throughout that you can feel it, but it never feels like, I never feel the peak of it for some reason. Well, and the other thing I noticed is on a lot of bows, especially when you haven't shot them yet, the first few times you shoot them and you're not used to the draw cycle, you'll hit that back wall hard, right? And I didn't do that on yours. It just smoothly came right into it. I could tell it was more weight than mine, and mine's got a good draw cycle on it, But a lot of times on a new bow, I'll find if I go shoot 5 bows, I'm slamming the back wall, because I'm just not used to how the draw cycle feels. But I didn't feel that on yours. That's one thing I like about the RX1. I had trouble getting it to tune when I first got it, and what I found out over time was the let off was just too much. Oh, and so I switched out the modules, so there's not much let off on it now. And I hold so much better. Yeah, I lowered the let off on mine, especially with the hinge. I like it a lot better. Yep, and it shoots so much better with just a slight let off. So I probably can't hold it back as long, maybe, but who cares? I don't need to for the most part. And you've watched me shoot. I shoot a lot faster than I used to. Yeah, you shoot a lot faster than I do.
And what I found is when I come to full draw, I steady the shot and I go, and I don't put too much time and thought into it. I am far more accurate, like way more accurate.
Yeah.
If I shoot that shot within 5 seconds of getting the bow back, I shoot tighter groups than if I go 8, 9, 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And the longer I'm at full draw, even when the let off was a lot more, just didn't shoot as well.
Yeah, I didn't either. I noticed that mine will go up to 90% let off, and I tried it at first, and I didn't like it at all. I lowered it down. I think I have it at 75 right now, if I remember right. Instead, it'll go all the way to 90% let off. But the other thing I was going to say, too, to clarify, so you said your slider, not this one, but your slider, your Montana Black Gold will go past 100. Mm-hmm. I should say, and this is something I learned, so I'll throw it out there, because they don't really advertise it. I love Montana Black Gold, by the way. It's good company.
Yeah.
But mine's the Pure 75. Mm-hmm. The Pure 75, it's made out of a little stronger aluminum, yada, yada. It doesn't have as much range as the non-Pure 75 slider. Because my last sight was not a Pure 75, and I could get it to go. So if somebody's out there doing the math on my bow speed going, well, why shouldn't make that much difference that he's...
So it's not that your arrow can't clear the sight housing.
No, it's that the sight housing doesn't move as much as the other sliders. So they're Pure 75, and I called them.
Because you have a huge gap right there.
Right. So I called Montana Black Gold, and they said, oh, yeah, the Pure 75 doesn't move as far. And I'm like... Well, I wish you would have advertised that.
That's your more expensive version.
That's the more expensive version. You would think that wouldn't be the case, and it's stronger.
Look at the gap between my 0 and where my arrow would be,
right? And
the gap between yours. I mean, you have a lot of room, and
I have the clearance to move. It's just that the actual bracket.
That's even if
far.
Okay.
And I put those pins as low as I dare in the sight housing to try to maximize the yardage. But and again, I'm not. Other than the fact I do hunt really open country, I'm not saying I've never shot over 70 yards at an animal, but if I get one wounded, I sure would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I like to practice that far. But anyway, I just thought I'd clarify that. The Pure 75 does not move as far as the other ones.
Well, I like the lighted knock. We talked about that on the Instagram story today. Yeah. This is a fire knock. You know, one thing I learned about knocks is that they're far more critical in an arrow build than I used to think.
Yeah.
I used to think you just slap any knock in there and it didn't matter. But after hearing Randy Ulmer and John Dudley and others talk about knocks, you realize that the throat of the knock, how it hits the back of the arrow and all of that has a huge impact and it makes sense now to me in sending that arrow.
Yeah.
You know, consistently to the target.
Yeah. It also plays, not specifically the knock, but when we talk about high FOC, one thing that Brent taught me is that adding weight to the front is usually how we add FOC, right? Increase FOC.
Right.
But taking weight off the back has a dramatically bigger effect than adding weight to the front. I think, I'm going to quote this wrong, I think he said it's 1 to 4 grains. So taking 1 grain off the back is the equivalent of adding 4 to the front or something like that. Yeah. So anyway, that's one thing I didn't realize.
Yeah, and you can tell that's why he's got this little tiny bit in the back, and you got all this giant. Yeah, he mentioned that. And so my other arrow, which I was showing you earlier today, so my Carbon Defiant, my Hoyt Carbon Defiant is this is a 250 spine arrow with a 200 grain tip. And I have a lighted knock in here. The setup allows me to maintain extreme FOC, even though I have
a heavier knock.
Even though I have a heavier knock, because there's a battery in here.
Right.
Now my other setup is 175 grain tip and a 300 spine shaft.
Okay.
And it's for a lighter poundage bow. It's like 70 pounds on my Carbon Defiant. It's already a slower bow to begin with than the RX-1. You know, it's not a speed bow of any kind. So I think it shoots the IBO on the Defiant is like 10 or 12 feet per second slower just out of the box. So you add all that together.
Lower poundage.
Lower speed, lower power efficiency, you know. So you end up with a bow, you end up with a lighter arrow. And so that's what I'm running on the other system. I can't put a lighted knock in the back because
it's messing with your FOC.
Then it'll mess my FOC. It'll put me into the, 18% FOC and set up above 20, 21. But having used the lighted knocks now, being able to see exactly where that arrow goes in, it tells me everything about the tracking job that's about to happen. Yeah. You know, and whether I'm even going to have one. And with Brent's arrows, especially, when I use the non-lighted nock, the vanes are so tiny,
You don't see it.
and the nock is so tiny that as soon as it gets to 40 yards or further, like it disappears.
No,
I can't see.
yeah, I
and
don't
then you
see
see
mine
the
either.
animal buck and run, but I don't
don't
know
really
if I hit it in
Yeah.
the guts or if I hit it in the shoulder. Like I
Right.
cannot tell. And that's where the lighted nock just is a game changer,
Yeah.
I think.
I hope Idaho gets on the program with that. And
I'm
it's like
surprised
it has
they're
been
not.
hashed over a million times, but it just doesn't give you any unfair advantage. It just purely helps you after the shot.
Yeah. I mean, completely different setups, but
Yeah.
both slamming those targets and
Yeah.
getting good penetration.
I might have to give another Hoyt a try.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually, shooting it.
I'm excited. I haven't tried the RX3. Like I said, the RX1 took me a while to
Now, what's the difference between
figure
the
out.
RX3 and the RX1?
You know,
Is one longer? Or is that not the difference? Is that not what they're... I used to know the answer to that, but...
I haven't set mine up yet, so I can't really speak
Yeah.
to it. I'm meeting with them in a week or two.
Oh, and you're going to get an RX3?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Get
good.
it
I'll
all
take
set
your
up.
RX1.
It's funny because same thing with every bow I get. It takes time to get comfortable, and every year if you get a new bow, you've got to go through the steps of
Right.
dialing it and getting it all good. And they're really excited about the new Helix, so I'm going to get one of those as well, just so I can talk about both. You know, whenever I switch to a new bow, I'm always in love with my previous bow more.
Oh, yeah.
By the time I've got it mastered, I've killed a bunch of animals with it.
Yeah.
I know it. I'm really good at shooting it.
Are you sentimental with your bows at all? Like, is there an attachment because you've
yes,
killed them? Are
yeah,
you?
Absolutely.
I don't have it, man. To me,
Yeah.
it's just like a tool. I'll toss it away and get another one. I don't have it.
I have a certain. It's not that I'm sentimental. I think about it in terms. It's that I've figured out how to use it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
A little more in touch with it.
I mean, yeah, it feels
Yeah.
good. It feels good. And if it didn't shoot well, or if I wasn't good with it, I'd be like, good riddance.
Yeah.
Goodbye. You know. But you see me shooting, and it just feels so
Yeah,
good, and I
yeah.
have so much confidence in it now. And when I first got it, I didn't shoot it well. It took me some time
Yeah.
to figure it out. And like I said, for me, it was the let off. The let off, it made all the difference. And from now on going forward, I probably won't have any bows anymore that have much let off.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I was shocked. Like, I've always wondered, like, why in the world do you shoot 80 pounds? I mean, I'm a big, strong guy. It's
Yeah.
not hard for me to pull. But but I was shocked pulling yours. I could tell it was heavier than mine, but not 10 pounds. It's not much of a difference.
well, I had gone with a heavier bow when I had my aluminum Defiant,
Yeah. And that was a 34. It was a slower bow. Anyway, yeah.
and Aaron had ordered it for me. He's like, "You're a strong guy."
That's
You
right.
know,
I remember that.
Here's
Here, I got you
your
an
80-pound
80-pounder.
bow. You know, and I struggled with it.
Yeah.
I struggled to draw it in certain situations, and I struggled to shoot it. It was also an inch longer in draw. So not only is it heavy poundage, but
Yeah.
it was an inch too long. And this is part of my archery journey. you
Right,
know?
right.
I still, that was when I first linked up with Aaron. I really didn't quite know what I was doing. And I would hit my arm and bleed, bruise badly.
Yeah.
It just took me some time to figure out what was wrong, but that combination, overdrawing your bow and
Yeah.
having a high poundage makes it really
Right,
tough.
right.
And then to be accurate with that setup is tough.
Yeah.
Especially in a uncontrolled situation.
Right.
The reason I went with 80 plus pounds was I had no intention of doing that, but I went to Phil's shop in Denver, Phil Mendoza,
Mm-hmm.
and I walk in the shop and they had, Hoyt was there, one of the reps from Hoyt, and he had 10 of them on the rack. So they had the speed ones, they had the Cameron Haynes, they had this RX1 here. So I just went in there and I started
Shot 'em.
shooting them.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was shooting an 80 pounder. I didn't even notice it. It
Yeah.
didn't feel hard to pull. So after I shot them all and we talked for a while, he's like, "Yeah, that's an 80-pound bow." I was like, "Really?" Didn't
Yeah,
feel
that's-
like 80 pounds. And if it didn't feel like 80 pounds, why not shoot 80
Yeah,
pounds?
that's true. No, that's true.
So that's why I decided to do it. And then my intention was to get a 70-pound bow. So practice with the 80, feel how and then the 70 feels easy.
Yeah.
But I just never got another bow. Just got the one, and because I ended up liking it. So
yeah, it does. It pulls well. I kind of, when I shot it earlier, I didn't think about the fact that was 8-10 pounds more than mine.
Yeah, should shoot it again.
Yeah.
See what you think. Well, we're gonna wrap this baby up. Thanks for tuning into the Gritty Podcast, and hopefully this was helpful. Leave your comments in the YouTube section. Send us a DM, an email. Go to briancall.com. You can find all our contact information there. And as always, stay gritty, friends.